One of my favourite quotations is from Richard Dawkins, and it's this thing where he says, I think it's in The Devil's Chaplain, where he says that science is the poetry of reality. I made a couple of videos about this before, I keep coming back to it because I'm trying to flesh out what it means to myself, I suppose. Science is the poetry of reality. Now I'm guessing he probably just meant it as a kind of poetic flourish to indicate that science has this, can have this effect on a person the way that poetry has the effect. I might be wrong, but I'm guessing that's what he meant by it. But I'm choosing to take it quite literally, that he's making a statement of, or he's making a fact claim. So what kind of a fact claim would it be? And for me, the two key terms in that, science is the poetry of reality, is an understanding of what he means by reality, which I think is quite specific, or at least I'm interpreting quite specifically, and what he means by poetry. And again, I'm interpreting that quite specifically as well, as a particular approach. Okay, so let's start with the last one, reality. Now, what I don't think he means by that is, I don't think he's appealing to a kind of naive realism. You know, this sense that, you know, there's this world which just kind of exists in this really simple way outside of our eyes that we just access routinely without any kind of problems. I don't think he's talking about that kind of a reality. I don't think it's that kind of a claim he's making. I think he's talking about the reality that that Philip K. Dick refers to. He says, Philip K. Dick is a science fiction author, brilliant author. He says reality is the stuff that doesn't go away when you stop believing in it, which is, I just think is a fantastic thing to say. And I think it's that reality that Dawkins is talking about. The kind of reality that doesn't care whether you believe in it or not, that has no relationship to you, that is essentially impersonal. And I think that's a really useful term. I'm finding it really useful, at least anyway. That there's an approach to the universe at large. There's an approach to data and theories and facts and ideas and concepts, which places them outside of human experience, which outside of the human experiencing of those facts. You know, it's the reality of trees making noises in the forest even when there's no ear to hear it. It's that kind of a reality that I'm talking about. It's a reality which is, as I say, not coterminous with one's experience of it, with any contact with the personal, but is essentially impersonal. Okay, so that's what I think he's talking about in terms of reality. It's a reality. It's a set of data we can access, but doesn't depend on our accessing it for its consistency and its stability. Okay, the impersonal. So let me just substitute that word in that original aphorism. Science is the poetry of the impersonal. Okay, let me just go back to this poetry word, because as I say, Dawkins, I don't know what he meant by it really, but where I'm choosing to approach that word is from that set of ideas that I've talked about in a few of these videos, not recently, to do with what's sometimes called poetic cognition, or a set of disciplines associated with that, like cognitive linguistics, embodied philosophy, a whole series of disciplines around that, broadly to do with how we understand things, how we understand the world at large, how we understand ideas. And the approach that those disciplines suggest is to do with how the mind works and how it relates to language and how it relates to the world. And how I would describe that is that the understanding is that the way the mind works, the way that understanding works, the way that everything we do inside our heads pretty much works, has a lot in common with the way that poetry works. And that sounds really weird when you just say it. But when you think about what techniques poets use to write a poem, techniques like the use of metaphor, the use of metonymy, the use of compression, the use of figurative language of all kinds, the use of synecdoche, the use of irony, all these different tropes that poets use in the selection of the language they use, in the way that language is structured, in the metre, that the kind of rhythms that the language makes. All these features of language for a poet is where the meaning lies. That's the significance of it. Those are the techniques that poets use to make poems. And according to the logic of those disciplines I've mentioned, cognitive linguistics, cognitive poetics, and so on, the mind, the brain, uses exactly the same techniques, or very similar techniques, to turn the data of the world, the impersonal stuff of the world, into personal experience. And that's revealed in sorry, it's got an error message. And that's revealed, for example, in language. The language we speak, it's been demonstrated, it is between 70% and 90% entirely figurative, just using metaphor. It doesn't feel like it is. It feels like we're speaking literally, but a really simple, superficial analysis of language demonstrates how much metaphor there is actually in our language, which reveals how much metaphor and figuration and those other poetic devices feature in our thoughts and our minds. We think poetically because our minds are essentially, in these terms, poetic organising principles according to them, very similar to the way the poems work. Okay, so the poetics of thought and the poetics of mind and are the ways that we access the world. So let me just see if I can feed that back into that Richard Dawkins quotation. Science is the poetry of reality, he says. I've gone through that too. Science is the poetry of the impersonal. Let's see if I can put in this poetry bit. Science is the set of mental processes and expressions of those mental processes in the forms of words and theories and ideas and diagrams, which concern the impersonal world. Science is the poetry of reality. Okay, so there's a set of conceptual cognitive mechanisms which we share, which describe the impersonal world, and the name we give to those cognitive mechanisms and their expressions is science. Okay, that's about as far as I can get with that right now. What I want to try and do in a follow-up to this video is do a similar kind of thing with the idea of the personal. Because, science is this impersonal kind of objective stuff, sort of. I want to do a similar thing with the personal and the subjective. So I'll do a similar poetic rendition of what the personal is. And then I'll see if I can find a way to slam those two things together and think what might constitute a poetics which negotiates between the personal and the impersonal. Right, well that was fun. Stop capture.